Okay, so the verse in Yud Ches says as follows. Vayomer Adonai Elohim, lo tov heyot adam levado, e'aseh lo ezer kenegdo. And Havai Elohim said, it is not good that the Adam should be by himself. I will make for him a helpmate against him. Ezer kenegdo. Or a helpmate with him, across from him. But there's the contrast of either a helpmate or somebody, a force to be opposite, an opposing force. Okay, let's do this. This is a relatively short piece. Hine haya makom yomar ish. So, we're talking about Adam, and we know that Adam is comprised in its totality of both male and female. And yet here, in the character Adam, we're going to introduce him eventually to Ishto, his wife. So in this context, it's more appropriate to refer to him as the male aspect of Adam, which is Ish, seeking out his female counterpart of Adam, which is Isha.
Instead of calling him Adam.
Right, so why does it say it's not good for Adam to be alone, we're going to give him an Isha? That doesn't make sense, because Adam is usually referred to as in potential, the entirety of the human form, which is made up also of male and female. Okay, so Hine, behold, haya makom, there was place, Yomar, for the verse to actually refer to him instead of Adam here, but to Ish, meaning a masculine half. Tachat, instead, Ma bara Hashem Isha le'ish, im lo lihiyot kiyum bamin. Why did God create a female human for the male in humanity? Im lo lihiyot kiyum bamin. Obviously, that there should be the perpetuation of the species. V'lama katzaf Hashem al Adam, and why did God get angry on man? V'halo kimat haya nimna milivchar b'chaim nitzchiyim. Meaning, ultimately, when man sins, God gets upset. V'halo, and it is not kimat haya nimna milivchar b'chaim nitzchiyim. Could it be that he was held back from choosing eternal life? Nimna means to be held back, to be restrained. He was almost restrained from choosing eternal life. What does this mean? Lazeh Amar, referring to this, it says, Dalacha, you should know, Ki vayomer Hashem Elokim, when Havaya Elokim said, Hine habachira hachavshit. Havaya Elokim here is referring to a person's free choice. Ubein yisha'er zach v'chai la'olam, whether he will stay pure and live forever, uvein yechet v'yamus, or whether he will sin and die. Hine, this situation, lo tov heyot adam levado. It is not good for man to be by himself. Okay, what he's saying is like this. He's saying that Hashem Elokim here is actually referring to the situation or circumstance where man is granted a free will. Because he has a free will, now it is important for him to have a woman. That's what Alshech is saying.
Free will in the woman?
He's going to explain. Now that man has free will, it's not good for him to just be in a situation where, meaning humanity has free will. Now we need to make male and female to be together, man and woman to be together, so that Adam can survive in a situation of free will.
Oh, that's interesting, because the question was always raised: why didn't God create the man and female at the beginning?
Right.
So you're saying the instruction not to eat from the tree and to eat from all the other trees, that is the essence of free will. And after receiving that, he then has to have a wife. There's a connection between those
Quite
two.
Possibly. We'll see what he says. But going along the lines of what you're saying, I think it's capturing very much the idea that the original commandment, when we're talking about Adam, reality is being instructed to Adam in its totality, including the potentiality that ends up becoming split into the polarity of male and female. But once that's understood, then we turn that into male and female so that they can come together and survive a situation of Bechira Chavshit, which we have to explain why. But I'm saying, meaning the Adam, it's not that there was an Adam who was male and then he was given a female. It's that, just pretend for a moment that we're talking about the situation of where it's du partzufi, the two faces. Meaning the Adam, on that level of reality, receives the tzivoy, lives in a state of free will, and yet somehow, in order to make the most of that, it then has to be deconstructed into two separate elements.
But it's more than that. It's saying that in order to, the only way you can survive the potential death of free will is to have a soulmate.
I don't know. Let's see. I'm not, because you're already saying what that antidote is.
Right.
I'm not sure. Let's see where he's going to go with that.
Okay.
All right. So, Dalacha, you should know. Ki vayomer Hashem Elokim, when the verse says, and Havaya Elokim said, Hine habachir chavshi, that is a reference to free will. Uvein yisher zach v'chai la'olam, whether he stays pure and lives forever, uvein yechet haviyamos, or whether he will sin and die. Hine lo tov heyot adam levado. It's not a good situation for Adam to be alone. Ki halom mitziut yetzer harabo, because he has, once we've given him free will, he has the element of the evil inclination in him. V'im yeharher, and if he allows himself sinning thoughts, right? He contemplates, he imagines, he fantasizes about sinning. V'yotzi zera levatala, and let's say he'll come to a situation where he will waste seed, and he will waste the potential, the holy potential that has been invested in him to perpetuate life, because just as a response to contemplating sin, yifkom, it will cause a tremendous blemish. Ba'ofen shemasha amarti, in the vein that I've said before, meaning that God has said in the verse, Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa v'hinei tov. It says at the end of Yom Shishi that God saw all that He had made, and it was good. Lo tov yihiyeh, things will not be good now because he has the Yetzer Hara. Ki achar she'adam hu ikar. Once man has been made the seat, the driving force, the main point of all of existence, Yimaleh ha'aretz tumah. If man becomes mitigated by iniquity, it will fill the whole earth with impurity. Alkein aselo ezer. Therefore, I'm going to give him a helper, meaning somebody to resist the Yetzer Hara and make sure that to up the ante so that things will be good. V'yiyeh ha'ezer kenegdo, and that help will be opposite him, meaning it will be against him. Kolomar lu'umat ma sheyehu. It will be facing, it will be contra to what he is himself. Imhu yishar b'kedushato, if he stays in holiness, mashi shamesh ima yolid kocha kedusha, when he cohorts with his female counterpart, he will bring into the world, he will birth powers of holiness and sanctity, ye'azer, and they will aid, v'yitpa'er, and bring beauty, bahem, through them. V'im yit'aker, or if he becomes dark, b'haviyato, be'avoto, in his existence is darkened in its twisting perversion. Yitaker is achor, means dark, and avato means ivui, means a perversion, a twisting. So in the situation where Chalila, he will listen to his Yetzer Hara and he will become perverted, Tihelo ezer liot kiyum bamin, he will still have the ability to perpetuate the species, shehu ezer lo, which will be a boon for him, because kanoda, like it is known, ki hamet below zera hu haru, somebody who dies without seed, meaning somebody to perpetuate his legacy, is totally destroyed. K'mo she'amar Zal, like Chazal say, meaning that there's a backdoor here. There is, he can survive, because if he's messed up his own life and then he decides to dedicate whatever he has to fixing it, he can invest in the future to undo his damage, and all that is given to him by this aid of having a female counterpart. So he's saying very much in Pshat. Meaning, I was intrigued to what you were saying. I'd like to hear you develop that more about the significance of a soulmate. But here he says that it's a very practical, technical issue, meaning the introduction of the power that a female aspect of creation has at its disposal for him to perpetuate the species gives him a way to undo the damage.
It's fascinating. It's not really the woman, it's the children that the woman gets him that will undo the damage.
Meaning, pretend that man could be totally, if he was immortal, and to live on that, meaning that before the development, if we did not extract something from him to become the idea of woman, what would he be? What's the difference between? It's almost like the creation of a woman is the extraction of humanity to give to the development, to give that which already was a new mechanism to perpetuate itself. Meaning, Isha is humanity and the manifestation of this new chidush that the species of Adam HaRishon has to invest in future, to allow for longevity and perpetuity. It's almost like a mortal eternity that's given to man. That even in his mortality, that the idea for him to stretch it out and to continually do, and that there is some sort of grand, direct, meaning he has the right and the ability to change and to determine the future and to try to fix it. That's a very noble thing now that's being given. It's being taken out of man and fleshed out and given back to him. Meaning, a woman is humanity, just like man is humanity, but it's an aspect, a new creation of that, which is an expression of maternity, of a nurturing, and the investment in a future that allows for ultimate good to prevail.
Interesting.
And it actually goes back. I mean, it's interesting. We're talking about it has to do actually with last week's parsha. There's a machloket between Sari Imenu and Avram Avinu, whether Kiddush Hashem, the ultimate Kiddush Hashem, is the sanctification of God's name by Yitzchak giving himself up, meaning the promise of a future being given back to God as a karban, or no, the insistence that no, we invest in life and good comes from the investment in life. All we can do is invest in life and the hopes that something good will come out of it. And the ultimate Kiddush Hashem is an Am Yisrael that constantly invests in life and does mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim, and that is more greater than the Kiddush Hashem that would be by sacrificing Yitzchak. And this is always the man versus the woman. I'll tell you what I mean. That Amram said, in facing the decrees of Paro, he says, we're not playing this game, we're boycotting. God's saying that we're going to throw out all our longevity and all our investment in the future. We're not playing this game, God. We're separating from our wives. We're not making babies, so you can just throw them out. And Miriam says, Daddy, your decree is worse than Paro's. Because Paro only decreed on the physical bodies. You're decreeing on eternity. They shouldn't even come into being. And Paro only decreed on the males, and you decreed even on the females, etc., etc. And we know that in the merit of the righteous women, we got to leave Mitzrayim, and that was manifest in the kiyar, the urn, which was made out of the mirrors that the women used to beautify themselves so they could seduce their husbands. Because man said, we're not playing this game, we're boycotting, we're not investing in a future. And the women said, we have to convince them to invest in a future in order to, because we have a deep belief where they're in the embodiment of ultimate good in existence and the nurturing that they're investing that ultimately will, okay, so that's expressed. The kiyar, you know how the Kohanim wash their hands by the kiyar? They put their hands on their feet in an imitation of the pose that Yitzchak Avinu did when he asked to be tied on the Mizbeach. So it comes full circle. This is basically the man's perspective is when challenged, when faced, it's the nature of a man is, I'm not investing in the future, the buck stops here. And yet, if it's a little bit inappropriate and they might miss out, a woman, the feminine wisdom has to kind of trick him and convince him. The women seduced the men in Mitzrayim, and the women kind of have to, basically God is ratifying the approach that it's like, no, the insistence on the future investment is actually the tikkun, or gives it another ability to fix maybe. There's this theme here. So I'm referencing that in terms of what he said to kind of put it in a different light, or expand really the depth of what he's mentioning here.
The other thing that's interesting is that you have at the end of the sixth day, the first description of the creation, that God said the world is very good.
Yeah, and that's a reference to Ze Yetzer Hara.
Yeah, but
and here he cut it short. Did you notice what he did here?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. What do you want to say?
Well, I was going to say that then you have afterwards in the second description, Lo Tov.
Right.
So how does that work out?
So I think that's really behind what he's saying here, because so Chazal say, V'hine Tov Me'od. What's Tov Me'od? Zu Yetzer Hara.
Right.
That in itself is a mystery. Why would the Yetzer Hara be what God says Tov Me'od? But if Chazal are identifying that somewhere in those words is a direct reference to Yetzer Hara, so look at what the Alshech says. He says, Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa v'hine Tov. He doesn't say Tov Me'od. He says Tov. He stops short of Me'od. Lo Tov hiyeh over here. So, meaning he's saying exactly your contrast. He says over there it says Tov, and here it says Lo Tov. Ki acha she'adam hu ikar. What's the Tov there in the sixth day? Because the creation is finished. Why? Because man is made, right? And part of man doing his thing is he has to have the Yetzer Hara in him to position himself there.
Yeah.
But then it creates a problem, because if he has the Yetzer Hara now, it's Tov because everything's set up, right? It's Me'od because he's capable. Why is he capable of good? Because he has that element of bad in him. So now he's Bechir Chavshit. So now he can choose good. So it makes it significant. Yikes! we have this Yetzer Hara here. So how
So
do we?
why doesn't he
so
say
so
Tov
lo
Me'od?
tov, meaning because if he does what he's supposed to, it'll be tov me'od. But the problem is he has an element in him in order to do that, which is it's a free radical. So now we're concerned if he's levado, it's going to end up lo tov, because he has, meaning the levado here is the problem.
Yeah, but the thing is,
So we don't, meaning if he has a Yetzer Hara and he's left levado, it's not going to be good. It's a patch. We recognize, we set him up, we put the Yetzer Hara in him to allow for him to do very good things, but now itself we're concerned for the Yetzer Hara, so we want to we have to, one last element is that if he succumbs to the Yetzer Hara, we're going to be in big trouble. So we're going to put a patch so that when that happens, he can actually make amends. Right. That's his approach.
But isn't there an error here that he's contrasting Tov velo Tov, because on the sixth day there isn't Tov, it's just Tov Me'od.
Are you on a?
Was he quoting Tov? Tov is before man.
No.
You have after man's created. You don't have. You have
Yeah.
just Tov Me'od, isn't it?
Yeah. You just stop short of the word Me'od.
So he should have quoted Tov Me'od.
Right, and he doesn't.
And you're saying that's because.
I'm just saying that Tov Me'od, there's a chazal that says that that's a specific reference to the Yetzer Hara.
But why is Alshech not quoting Tov Me'od?
Because he's saying that in order to stay Tov, meaning the Tov is the Yetzer Tov. The Me'od, one of the ways to understand is the Me'od is the Yetzer Hara. Why is he Tov Me'od? Because he has a Yetzer Hara, now when he chooses good, it's significant. Right? So the Me'od, what allows him to be Me'od is actually a reference to the part in him that's bad.
Right.
Okay? So once he has, meaning we're saying he's Tov. What's Tov? Right? That's a Yetzer Tov. But if he's alone, he's going to be lo Tov, because he also has a Yetzer Hara. That Tov is dependent on whether he listens to his Yetzer Hara or not. So that's what he's saying here. He's saying we want to stay in the element of Tov, we want to maintain, but now it's being mitigated because in case, meaning there's a possibility if he does something from his Me'od. How do we maintain the Tov of the Tov? He's contrasting Tov to lo Tov.
But it's still it's also confirming the bringing over of the woman as an antidote to the Yetzer Hara.
Yes, and on the most basic level, what you're referring to now is the last paragraph. Here, let's look inside. O Yomar, or maybe this. Okay. Ben tihiyeh batzugo, ben tihiyeh bilti batzugo, tov lo ba velo biyot levado. Oh no, I'm sorry, I skipped on. Okay. All right. O Yomar, ki hine mitchila hayudu partzufen. Initially, they were a two-headed being, two-sided, right? The man and woman were joined together as one Adam. V'hayta hi me'achorav, and she was behind him. He was still in front. Amar lo tov hiyoto levado. It is not good that it will be by itself, meaning it should remain as one. Ese lo ezer b'mashetia kenegdo. I will make him a helper with that she is across from him. Neged panav, meaning right now she's attached to the back. I'm going to separate them and make them face to face. Masha'enke ma'achorav, right? Because right now, rather, she is behind him. Ki lo ye'azer mimana. He's not going to be able to benefit from her if they ain't facing the same way. Okay? O Yomar, ben tiheh batzugo, ben tiheh bilti batzugo. Whether she's his soulmate or not, tov lo, it will be good for him, ba, with her, velo biyot levado, as opposed to being alone. Even companionship. Even if she doesn't get him and he can't share his dreams with her and he's so frustrated, etc., etc. But the truth is, she could be a good friend too. Mipnei hahirhur, because of his fantasies. What does that mean? Ben tiyeh batzugo, ben tiyeh bilti batzugo, tov lo ba, velo biyot levado mipnei hahirhur. Meaning,
it's better to get married even if it's not your soulmate.
Right, because it'll keep you out of trouble. Ach echpol tovato, but God says, you know what? Just on the level of staying out of trouble, it's good for him, and yet I will double the benefit. Adam ezer kenegdo. Not only am I going to give him somebody to hang out with, which is kenegdo, somebody to look opposite, but ezer, not just somebody to engage in sexuality with, but also an ezer, somebody that helps and supports. Shehi batzugo, a soulmate, kenegdo. across from him, that parallels him from a piece of his soul.
That's different from what we were saying before about the children.
Yeah, meaning it's not, meaning before he was addressing, there's different elements here. There is the very real ability to procreate. There is the benefit of intercourse, meaning for the man himself, and there is the companionship of the soulmate. Those are the three issues. And he's saying each one of them by themselves is a good thing and is noteworthy and necessary. Each by itself, he's recognizing the importance. Oyom.
He's given three reasons for why
that they're all benefit, right? Yeah, exactly. Oyomar, and this really what I was waiting to share. It says Inyan Ma'amar Rabbi Chia alav hashalom. Rabbi Chia in Yevamot, his wife gave him a lot of problems, and she would really make his life very, very uncomfortable. And he was a big tzaddik, and she would do all kinds of things to the point where his concerned friends, who were also the Amoraim, they said, "Why do you put up with that?" Mm-hmm. Meaning, he seemed to be very, very. He sustained a lot in his relationship, which seemed to be out of bounds and detrimental, mm-hmm. and they did not understand why he put up with it. And he said, "Ki ali isha amar," regarding the woman, it says, "Dayenu shemigadlot et banenu umatzilot otanu min hachet." He said, "It is enough. I have to be so grateful to my wife that she raises our children and she saves me from sin." So meaning, the one thing that's missing,
two of the reasons.
Right, what's the one thing missing?
Is companionship.
Meaning she is miserable to him. Right. And yet, those things have such benefit that he withstands those things, and he feels like he owes her tremendous credit that he could not be able to do his job and be himself without those two elements. Okay? Ve'afshar, and it is possible, ki hein shtei ela amar Elokim, these two things God is referring to when he says, lo tov heyot al adam. That's so amazing. Meaning, it's one thing to say that there are three elements that when a man and a woman are together, it affords the man, and each one is significant by themselves. This is a chiddush, that if you're missing one,
it's still worth it.
Those two are still worth it. It's still tov, even when you're dealing with that kind of negativity. I would say that humanity, it's a very rare specimen of individual that is able to relate and actually benefit from those levels in that kind of situation. That is not the norm. It's not possible.
Most relationships only have 2 out of 3.
I would say that on some level, if you don't have an Ezer, those other things are miserable. Like, I would think, I would just imagine the most important thing about two souls hanging out with each other is that they be civil and that they see each other as souls. Whether they're able to have children together or, whatever their physical situation is. And yet, it's just interesting in terms of Musar. I'm not, I'm raising some of the implications here.
Follow through with the conclusion.
I'm saying that it would appear from what he's saying that you can have a miserable relationship with the person, and if you still have those two elements, that you have children that she cares for, that she's committed to the perpetuation of and the raising of children in a way that's meaning in a good way, meaning she totally has that, and she and they have a sexual relationship, meaning that in itself is good, and therefore he has to sustain that other stuff. It doesn't take away from that other stuff. Okay. And it's possible that these two aspects of both the sexual relationship and the raising of the children is referred to when God says, Lo tov heyot adam levado. It's not good that man should be by himself. Shehu linatzel min hachet al yedei hirur, that he should be saved from, meaning he shouldn't be alone. Why? He should be saved from sinning through sexual fantasy. V'gam esa lo ezer kenegdo, and I'll also give him a helper across from him, meaning legadel et banav, to raise his children. Okay, and you can say maybe that also that's in light of the Alshech's comments when it says ezer kenegdo, it's still an ezer, it's still an help, even if she is kenegdo.
Very
that's
nice.
Just me, right?
That's
okay.
Very nice.
Okay. Okay. Baruch Hashem Yolam. Amen.
Very good. Excellent. Big Hidushim.